Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining for my third book chat. Today, I have a wonderful guest who's going to be talking about his book, Math Recess, that he co authored. But my name, for those of you who don't really know me, my name is Melody McAllister, and I am also this is my story, the I'm sorry story. So I am in a large author community. And so I just love reading their books. I love talking with them, picking their brain. And hopefully it will inspire a lot of you to keep writing and, maybe even think about publishing. And if you do, hit me up. I have some networking skills going on. But today, and I want to say hi from Alaska. Today, my friend that is joining me is Mr. Sunil Singh. How are you doing,
Hi,
Sunil?
Melody. I am pretty good.
And tell everybody where you're hailing from.
Yeah, I'm hailing from Pickering, Ontario, which is just about 20 minutes outside of Toronto, which is the capital of Ontario, in the lovely province of Ontario. And it's actually very warm. And I just had a conversation with a colleague of mine, work related, and we're talking about weather. He's in Ohio, and we realized June is our favorite month because you can't rely on May anymore in terms of this part of um, the geographic part of the world, because May used to mean like spring, but one weekend would be like really nice, next weekend be rainy. So, and as a kid, I remember even April was nice. So June is like my favorite, one of my favorite months, and then my next favorite month is October.
Okay, is that because it's Halloween and you like candy?
Well, it's because of the fall colors. It's just
Oh,
the changing of the colors. It just creates this sort of almost this internal change to, we're going to recede into the winter and we're going to become more reflective. Taking walks. It's I mean, I'm very fortunate. I mean, I some days I wish I could live in some place like California where it's nice and temperate the year round. But I really honestly think I would miss the seasons.
yeah. I agree with you. I think spring and fall are my two favorite seasons because
Yeah,
it's kind
me
of
too.
like it's the change and we need that change. I think that like mentally we need the
it
change. And
it puts a little jump in our steps. It's just the thawing of even just that first nice warm day where that sort of that patch of snow where I am, which has been on the ground, which now looks gray, has been on the ground for 3 months, and it just disappears, and the mud starts to come up, and you start to smell the earth.
yes.
Right? It's very sort of yeah, in terms of the sense of smell, the beginning of spring, the thawing and that. So yes,
Yeah, and the rains and how it smells
everything.
afterwards.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, totally. I do enjoy that about Alaska, but we have with like I came from Texas for like 20 years in Texas almost, and we were just warm all year long, like summer for 9 months, and now it's winter for 9 months. It's crazy. I
it's
don't enjoy.
it's. I mean, the summer heat in Texas is equivalent to Canadian winter. It's so unbearable. You have to be inside, right? It's the same thing.
Yes,
You can't be
yes,
outside.
but I miss it. I still miss it. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
lie.
No, no, I know.
It's chilly here. It's like in the 60s, but it feels cold. It doesn't even feel warm. So, but maybe in July, we'll
Well,
see.
as you get older, like my tolerance for heat, I don't think I can handle anything above mid 80s. I'm going to speak in Fahrenheit for most of the American audience. It's, yeah, I just like it. The best temperature is when you can't feel temperature,
Yeah.
right? You
Yes,
can't
like
feel it.
70, 75.
Yeah, like you don't feel it. It's not cool. It's not like it's getting warm. It just, you walk out and it's just, you're just in sync with Mother Nature.
What is 75 degrees Fahrenheit like equivalent to Celsius? Like 20?
No, 20 is 68. So
Oh,
probably like
okay.
23.
Okay. Well, I was really close.
You were really close.
Yeah, so I have a little math in me, which is kind of cool because you're pretty big at math, right?
Yeah, I mean, I like to, even my kids, even though a calculator is available, we often do uh, questions in our head just for the mental exercise and the muscle memory.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Even if it's something like the other day, um, it was 12 times 8 with my daughter, and she's I and the the way we did it, 10 times eighth and 2 times eighth and added up. Then she said, well, I have another strategy too. Maybe I could do something, 12 times 10 and then subtract in terms of whatever. And it's just the dialogue. Again, that's why the answer, and I know we're going to be talking about math, unless the answer is 0, infinity, complex, which is the imaginary root, something undefined, which has some sort of puzzle mystery, or has a number which is like a sort of one of those famous constants like pi or e, or has a numerical application. I don't care about the answer. I care about the dialogue around it. So most of the answer questions we do in math are completely a waste of time. Like, I don't care about where when 2 lines meet and if they're not parallel, I know they're going to meet. Mm-hmm. I know they're going to meet. So they're going to, am I really interested at the point they meet? No, I'm not. What I'm interested in is what kind of mathematics are we going to need and different strategies could we use to find where this point meets? Because that point is not important.
Right. And that's real life, because when we're in our jobs and we're in the math related topics, it's not always like a finite answer. It's a lot of different possibilities, because that's real life.
It's the way that I would like my own kids to thank you, bless you. Thank you. Like my daughter, for example, she's 11. I know what she's going to do for a living. I mean, I think she likes animals, and I could see her being a vet, or she loves the farm. She loves being on the farm, horses, all that's her jam. She loves baking. I don't care what my kids do; they're all going to get the same amount of math.
Mm-hmm.
Whether she chooses that, she's still going to be. We're going to still do the same math that I would have done with her if she chose engineering.
Mm-hmm.
Because the way I want, and she sees it, and so does my son, is that mathematics is something you dabble with. And it's in the book. It's not my quote. It's from Berkeley Everett, who's actually mentioned the book. You dabble with it. You play with it. It's pleasurable. It's fun. So this whole, am I going to need this? 90% of stuff you do in school, you don't need. You don't need Shakespeare's King Lear, Edward Albee's, zoo story, archery. You don't need these things. So why did periodic table? So what does math get picked on for practicality? And it can be very practical. It is, but you're shortchanging students and teachers if that's all you teach it for.
Right. Agreed. Right. And I think that we see that right now more than ever. Now that we're teaching at home because of the pandemic, and now that it feels like our world is just burning to the ground, like we're really having to focus on what is important in life. And everything that you just said, like when we are so focused on getting stuff wrong, or all these stupid questions that are not building our brains to think about math or process math, well, it just makes us actually internalize that we're either good or bad at it. And that doesn't help anyone.
No, and that's a historic kind of experience. And, like I said, this pandemic, as we discussed prior to going live, is going to change a lot of things. Some things we have a feeling of what it's going to change. Some things we don't. I just know that everything is going to be reprioritized. We both have kids, and mm-hmm. I feel sad for my kids because their life pre-pandemic is gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I look back to my own childhood and I go, did I really even have that childhood? It was so cliched, innocent, like almost like you'd see in the movies, like just, playing in sort of, construction site where homes were being built, latchkey kids, just doing dumb stuff that if my kids did, I would, go mental. And but the risk that we took as kids, and they are not going to have that going forward, because I think a lot of things are going to change. There's still a lot of unknown. So, cycling back to math, I know you got it up there. What does play mean? It means the exact same thing that we want play to mean when kids are playing. And I don't know if we mentioned the book, but
I know you should show the book because we haven't mentioned the book.
Yeah. So this is actually the hardcover.
Oh, yeah. Wait, push it over a little bit.
It's God. I am so.
Oh, yeah, I know. That's right. There you
There
go.
you go. Okay. And there's my co-author, Chris Parnell, there too.
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm not friends with Christopher, but Christopher, congratulations also to you. Because actually, and just before you tell us about Play, you just celebrated the first year anniversary of your book
Yes.
publication.
Yeah, it came out, I think, end of March. So it's
March
been
16th, yeah.
wow.
Sorry, I looked it up.
Okay. You know better than I do. So yeah, it's been a year, and how it all started was George Couros, who works with Dave Burgess, and they have this subsidiary called Impress Publishing. He sent me a message on Twitter, I think in 2018, said if you ever, and I had no intention of writing a second book after Pie of Life. I didn't foresee it being like an author having multiple books. It wasn't like, okay, but he said, if you're ever interested in writing another book, I'd love for you to, maybe consider writing one for, and he kind of sort of, let me think about it. And then Chris Parnell and I, we thought we always discussed about writing a book together. So the planets aligned, and the idea of Play became the theme. A lot of it based on just my own classroom experience as a teacher, childhood memories of play. It's like making this soup. It's like making a stew. I just put it all in this pot, and I let it simmer for a while. And what did it came out? And yeah, math recess, right? I mean, what recess for most of us was one of the most fun parts of the day. The two recess periods, you would run to recess. So
Yeah.
what would math look like if you ran to math?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So the play is super, super important. And just in the macro sense, and as I was saying earlier, I don't think we mentioned this book, but it's very important for people watching to know. The amount of time that kids play unsupervised outdoors per day. Do you know what it is?
I hate to even
I
say
know.
an hour, not even that.
Yeah, you'd say like an hour a day. Kids are outside unsupervised, right? It's about 4 to 5 minutes a day
Oh my
in
gosh.
North America.
Wow.
And this is Dr. Peter Gray. He's a child psychologist. This is all his work and research. And he says there's usually causation doesn't mean correlation, but he says the decrease in play from the 50s and 60s, because school wasn't that big of a deal. It was just you went to school and you had chores and you played and you had family life, and those things were just as valuable and important. But the erosion decline of play has also been completely correlated with the rise of mental health, anxiety, depression in children. And just because they're on a soccer field wearing uniforms, this is all Dr. Peter Gray stuff. That's not play, because adults are watching, and not because the definition of play is it's self-directed and self-chosen, right? So, and you're also free to leave the game anytime. That's one of the first rules of play. So if you apply that to math, they're not playing with math, and maybe once a week they should be like Thursday is going to be like, okay, come on in. If you want to work individually on a math problem, go ahead. If you want to work in a partner on some sort of puzzle, go ahead. If you want to work in a group and brainstorm this, give kids a choice to how they want to play with mathematics that particular day. Right? It's if they want to create a social network of it, fine. If they want to do an isolation, fine. And that's the other thing too is, generally speaking, in society and hence school, we don't value introversion. Oh, I wish they'd be more outgoing. They are who they are. So the mathematics, everybody in the classroom can contribute. That sort of student who's maybe introverted, their reflections can help because they're going to the mountain, their own internal mountain all the time. And we need people like that. We also need sociable people who can, communicate and get others to talk, and that we need everything, and everything has to be equally valued.
Yeah, and I think like kind of what you're talking about too is just the institution that we have made public school, or that it's always been, and it just is more institutionalized. And in so many ways, it's scraping, choice and freedom away to learn content that, like you said, 90% of it. How are we even going to use it? And I think this pandemic is really showing us, what did we scrape first? We scraped off the the tests that we were taking at the end of the year.
Yeah.
We focused, I mean, people that really cared about kids and really wanted best for them focused on the social emotional part of it, because that's what was necessary. And I absolutely agree with everything you're saying. I mean, I have been home educating for the last year, and this is what I wanted for my kids. I wanted them to play. I was sick of my whole life being revolving around school and all the activities with school and everything about school. Like I wanted our family just to breathe, you know? So, and it has, and I wanted also to not focus on grades, and we haven't.
And so my daughter, who's 11, and she's asked to be homeschooled for a couple of reasons. So this pandemic has been like, okay, let's see what you can do with it, right? And I didn't say that, but I've watched her for the last couple of months. I mean, she plays Roblox with her friends late at night. She's chatting away, so she's social. She's problem solving. She even when she explains games to me, just the whole digital interaction. She's learned to make some kick-ass guacamole. Like honestly,
awesome.
like I made it at the beginning. Then I don't even make it anymore. I just let her make her guacamole, and it's amazing. She goes to Pinterest and finds recipes and other stuff. I do math with her, once in a while. It's not like it's regulated. It's like it's sometimes here, hey, want to do some math? There's no fixed time, and she is feeling so liberated and light because she's designing her, and she goes out for scooter rides, plays with a dog. She is so much happier in that state than she was in school.
Right.
So,
yeah.
And that was her decision. This is not like, hey, have you thought about homeschooling? Because I work from home. That never entered the foray. Like, it's like whatever she wants. And after she wants to go back to school, go back to school. It's your choice. Because once kids feel like all their choices have been stripped away, they're going to become passive learners. And in mathematics, and I shared this in a recent blog post. And again, it's not my idea. It's Peter Taylor, a friend of mine who's a professor at Queen's University. You know how much we spend time talking about math anxiety? Like, oh, we have to deal with math anxiety, math anxiety. He said math anxiety is not the problem. He says math alienation comes before math anxiety. Because once kids get alienated, they don't pay attention, they drift, they start missing concepts, which are important as they sort of get layered and have building blocks. And then the anxiety sets in because they don't understand. So if we're talking from a medical standpoint, alienation, anxiety sounds like when the tumor is metastasized. It's too late. It's done so much damage that's really hard to recover. It's maybe just the math trauma. You can make them feel less traumatized. But I don't know if they're going to be able to really enjoy math because that involves so much more time. So we have to deal with math alienation first.
Right. Totally agree. I mean, and I've read studies where it's like fourth grade is like the year that breaks so many kids.
Third grade.
Like they love it.
Third, fourth grade.
I mean, and it's and you're right, because I taught fifth grade for over a decade and fourth grade also, but my fifth graders, like they came to me just feeling like they could not do math. That was all of my battle was, helping my kids be more competent. And I'd like to say that I help them, but like you're saying, it becomes a part of you, and that just makes everything harder, So.
Well, and I just had a conversation with a kindred spirit last night. He's in Australia, so he's 14 hours ahead. Jonathan Crabtree, who's done a lot of work in elementary math, and really discovering that we didn't really understand zero properly in integers. That's why integers got so late. So I did this with my daughter. She was like, she hasn't learned integers. Okay, she was on the couch. She was like doing something with her iPad. So I just wanted to see if his theory held true. So he says the problem when we do a question like -7 -4, he says there's no verb there. They're just adjectives and nouns. So I asked my daughter the proper question. I go, Rhea, what's if I have 7 negatives and I take away 4 negatives, how many do I have left? And even while she's distracted, she goes 3 negatives.
Wow.
Because I use the proper grammar.
Right.
And even just to give you those numbers, so traditionally in North America, if we ask a question like -4 minus 7, the kids are told that two minuses make a plus. So
Mm-hmm.
-4 plus 7 gives you +3. But the way it was historically done is that kids should intuitively go, I can't take away, I only have 4 negatives. I got to take away 7 negatives. That's impossible. That should be the first natural reaction. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is from Brahmagupta, the Indian mathematician, who came up with these 18 laws of zero. Because when you add zero to anything, it doesn't change the value or the sign. So Jonathan Crabtree says, well, let's add zero to this situation. But zero can be like zero pairing. So he says, well, let's add zero in the form of -3 and +3. Okay? Because that's still zero. And as soon as you do that, the -4 and the -3, which got included, becomes -7. You have a +7, and the -7 cancel out, and you have that leftover +3.
Yeah.
It makes
I
far
love
more.
that.
Yeah, and he's got 20 years of research of basically saying how kids can learn all the integer laws even before they can count to 20.
Good night. That is so cool. It's like a revolutionary way of thinking,
It,
but it
it's
shouldn't be, but it is.
well, hang on. It is revolutionary, but what's tragic about it is that he goes, if it was my ideas, people might go, that's interesting. I never thought of that. That's how historically the idea of zero was created. It was supposed to be the smallest number, um, because electron is -1 and a proton is +1. You don't say
Mhm.
electron is less than +1. They both have,
Right.
their charges cancel out to give you zero. Um, if you walk 7 miles west as opposed to 3 miles west, is 7 miles west less than 3 miles because you want to go east?
Okay, now I'm just trying to figure out what you mean.
Like it's
Right.
like he says, there's no directional laws in the universe. There's no up or down. The only thing which has direction is time, right? It goes forward, right? Unless
Hmm.
some black hole theories, it goes backwards. So he says we, there's a bias because positive numbers were considered first, and even the label, the negative numbers, it has that negative connotation.
Right.
But he said zero is the lowest number, and that's where all the laws came from. But it wasn't communicated properly to the Mideast, which and hence to the West. If zero was only communicated as a placeholder.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Like you just blew my mind. I just want to tell you
Oh,
that.
he's been blowing my mind for last year because even just he's come up with. I should connect you with him because he's fascinating. Time zone would be crazy, but he's made storybooks for kids,
Oh
ebook.
wow.
He's got a game, like he says, like in a bathtub, and he says room temperature. It doesn't even matter what room temperature is. And he
Right.
has like ice cubes, blue for cold and orange for hot. So
Hmm.
he uses ice cubes in terms of integers to regulate temperature.
Wow. That's awesome. And that's something that I like that you do too. You just do everyday math. You just make it make sense. And you put that out there sometimes what you're doing
Yes.
with your kids.
Oh,
And and that's what I try to do with my kids too, because I remember growing up and when I finally something was like, oh, this is what that means. Now, if I had just understood this at the beginning, I would have never struggled. But now it makes sense. And so I try to point stuff out like that with my kids, like if we're in the car or and going places or if we're making food or drawing or whatever. I just try to like see, okay. And my son is like brilliant and he rattles off things about numbers that I never put in his brain by any, but he recognizes patterns, he sees patterns, and he loves to talk about it. And I absolutely love that. My daughter, she's 11 also. She feels like she used to love math and we used to, she was like doing multiplication in second grade. I mean, she was all over math, but now she feels like she's not good at math anymore for a lot of different reasons. And I don't want to put the blame on anybody. It's just our public school system, our society, it all, myself. I mean, I'm sure I have part of that too. But she is less willing to talk about stuff because of how she feels about it. And I hate that because the stuff that I see my son when he says stuff out loud, then my younger kids are like, oh, like I didn't see that before. And when I just have math stuff out, like a calendar or a hundreds chart, they'll literally play with it like toys.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's fun.
Well, and that's what a classroom should be like. I don't know, a colleague, a friend of mine, I think he's in New York, I think he created a curiosity table. So it's just a table full of just math puzzles and manipulatives, and you can tinker and play with whatever things you want. And it's really just, again, going back to that play is just, you want kids to not just play literally with the math, which is like the tactile part is really important early on to touch, mathematics, to touch those unifix cubes or counters, and that's really important. But also play in that sort of academic sense that, that's why I've told the kids about, math history and stories, that math history really is about slow failure, and school is about fast success. And you wonder why things haven't been working. It's because the narrative has been like square peg round hole. We've tried to ham fist it through. You're supposed to, unless you are someone like, like the famous mathematicians like Gauss or Ramanujan, Sophie Germain, or, where things came relatively easily. For 99.9999% of the population, it's supposed to be a struggle. That's what it's supposed to be. Like you're not enjoying math in spite of the struggle. You're enjoying math because of the struggle. And
yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that's not communicated to kids.
And that's not what they're tested on either.
No, it's not.
Yeah, they don't get to pass if they get a wrong answer.
No, I mean, there's topics that my daughter loves prime numbers and all that kind of stuff, and she knows her primes up to 223, primarily because we were playing the game, the Dan Finkel's game, Prime Climb, and the last space on the board is the prime number 101. When you get your counters there, you win the game. So I remember when she was, I think, in fourth grade or third grade, and she goes, are there prime numbers after 101? I said, yeah, 103. She goes, what's the next one? I go, 107. And the next one, I go, 109. And then I started getting, like, I didn't know. Like, I didn't. So because of her, we now know our primes to 223.
Wow. That's so cool.
And it's important because the numbers which are not prime, she knows have factors to multiply, which is besides 1 times the number that it is. She right. Like for example, the number 119. For the longest time, if someone said, "Do you think it's prime?" I go, "Sounds prime to me. Sounds like really weird," but it's not. So then, and this is just recently. Okay, what 2 numbers multiply to 119? And so it was 17 times 7. So now I know part of my 17's timetable because of trying to figure out why 119 wasn't prime. And I had these conversations with my daughter. And I know I don't know if you do this with your kids when you do math. I do this consciously. Maybe you do it subconsciously. Every time I've done math with my kids, I've made sure that they're eating something that they like. I remember we used to go to this crepe place that made these amazing chocolate crepes. They loved it. And I purposely did, I don't know, just any math because I wanted their memories of association to always remember that we did math and it was happy times.
Yeah.
Like I've actually asked my daughter once, or was it my son? Probably could have been my son. As we went tobogganing, sledding, they're going down a hill. I said, how many prime numbers are there between 100 and 110 as we're going down the hill? Because it's silly. And that's the part that's also important, is that the disarming idea of mathematics, that they'll have silly memories of it too. It's not some of the math that we do is pretty serious, but the environment is not.
Right. I get it. I totally get it. And if you want kids to want to advance in math, then it has to be something that they feel safe and fun in. Yeah.
And they have to, like, I think I figured out that how you capture their interest is something just outside of their domain of ability. Like
Mhm.
it's too easy. It's like they get bored. But it's like, like I've done exponents with fifth graders. Um, I was in Coppell, Texas,
Mhm.
and I was visiting my friend Mary Kemper, who's a district math coordinator in Coppell, but she's also currently the president of the Texas Association of Supervisors of Mathematics. So she says, okay, I think you can come in and do a 20-minute lesson in May Volt's class, fifth grade. And I had to make up something like on the spot as I was like before lunch walk across the parking lot. I had not field tested this. So
But you're a teacher. You could do that.
yeah, exactly. I can just wait. So I put this number on the board and I said, is this number divisible by 5? And these kids are looking around each other going, yeah, because it ended in a 0 or a 5. So I wrote a bigger number which ended in a 0 or 5. Is this number divisible by 5? And I want them to be purposely bored and agitated going, why is this guy the guest speaker? Right? So then I wrote this super long number and they go, yes, it is. And then I threw a small curve. I said, okay, what about this one? So I wrote, I think 137 plus 23. Is this divisible by 5? And so they got a little bit more interested and everyone said yes. I go, well, how do you know? And some kids said, well, we add the two numbers up. And some kids said, we just added the last 2 digits, right? So I said, okay. Then I got one more for you, and it was going to occupy the same space as the 137 plus 23. So I drew a rectangle, and I go, this one's going to stump you. So I purposely created the idea of I'm the fool.
Mm-hmm.
So now they're like really cocky. They're really like, yeah, bring it on, whatever. Because it's going to be divisible by it's going to be divisibility by 5. So I'm not going to change the divisibility by rule. They're just going to go, okay, what can fit in that rectangle you drew? So then I drew 3 to the exponent 444 plus 4 to the exponent 333. So the first thing is half the kids don't even know what this is.
Neither do I.
Right? Because they don't know exponents. They don't know 3 raised to the exponent 444. So then I had to explain. Now they're curious about what does this number mean. So I go, well, 3 to the exponent 1 is just the number 3.
Mm-hmm.
3 to the exponent 2, we have to write 2 3s. It's like the 2 is giving instructions down to the 3. I'm trying to speak with their language vernacular. So it's 3 times 3. 3 to the exponent 3 is 3 times 3 times 3, which is 27. So I started listing them down. The answer is 3, 9, 27, 81, 243. And we started to see that there was a pattern because 3 to the exponent 1 is 3, 3 to the exponent 2 is 9, 3 exponent 3 is 27, 3 exponent 4 is 81, 3 exponent 5 is 243. The last digits are cycling back in.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have to use a calculator. We just know every 4th digit is going to end in a 1.
Wow.
Because the last digits are always in the base 3 raised exponent are going to be 3971, 3971. So 3 exponent 444, so we know that this number ends in a 1.
So it is not divisible by 5.
No, because now we have to look at 4 to the exponent 333, right?
Oh, right.
So then I asked, I go, what numbers will that number have to end in? So this 1 plus that, and they go 4, and I go, what else? 9. So those are the only 2 options. Do you think it's going to be 9? Because like it's an even number. And so they said, no, well, let's see if this 333 ends in a 4. So 4 to the exponent 1 is 4. 4 to the exponent 2 is 16. 4 to the exponent 3 is 64. 4 to the exponent 4 is 56. So this oscillates a lot faster. 4, 6, 4, 6, 4, 6, 4, 6. And then we go, well, which one's going to be 4 or 6? Well, all the odd exponents are 4 and all the even ones are 6. So 4 to the exponent 333, sorry, all the odd ones are 4. 4 to the exponent 333 will end in a 4. 3 to the exponent 444 ended in a 1. Those are the last digits. 1 plus 4 is 5. So I did a high school question with 5th graders.
So is it divisible by 5?
Yeah, it is.
Holy crap.
Yeah, because 343 raised to the exponent 444 ends in a 1. 4 to the exponent 333 ends in a 4. And adding those two humongous large numbers, only concerned about adding their last digits, 1 plus 4 is 5. Now, I explained this to you all orally. Of course, I was doing this on the whiteboard and visuals and all that. But I came at this question through a back door. Because if I would have just done this, kids go, I don't care about this question. But they cared about it because they're getting so many right.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, okay, I'm bored. Really? Okay, well, what now they want to know, what does that number even mean?
And it becomes a game.
And then becomes a game. And then we have to become sort of like, pattern seekers. Like,
right.
This number will not, you can't do this on a calculator.
Right. And you're working with their natural curiosity.
That's all I'm working with, because I'm working with their energy and stuff too. And, they're excited. And, they're basically, I did modular mathematics, and that shouldn't be a big deal, because kids, when they stare at a clock, analog clock, they're doing modular mathematics every day in terms of 12, mod 12.
Right.
It's okay, military time, it's 1300, but it's 1 o'clock again, right? It's like, so all these topics have a lot of intrinsic interest and curiosity, and those are the only topics I'm interested in doing. Like,
right, I can tell.
Yeah, my daughter doesn't do well at fractions. Well, nobody does well at fractions because
they don't make sense.
Like, we introduce fractions before integers.
Right.
Like, there is your, like, what are you doing? How did you go from whole numbers to fractions? Because fractions is the first gatekeeper, not algebra 1 or algebra 2. That's where we start to lose those kids in 4th grade. It's like, fractions again.
Right.
Like, for me, fractions, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I know you're going on, and we completely went off topic for a lot of reasons, and that's okay, because we don't have to talk about the script or anything like that. But one thing before we go, and for anybody that's still watching, we do have a few people watching, so thank you. But this is going to be on my YouTube too, and believe me, I'm going to be sharing it out. I'm also going to be writing up stuff that we're talking about in my own blog. But so let's say that school starts back up. And by the way, I love public education. I also love home education. I am for education, period. And for people who are teaching kids, like, that's who I'm for. And I know that it is a privilege. I just want to put that out there, a very big privilege for me to be able to stay home for 2 years and actually educate my own children. Like, it's an amazing thing. So that kind of leads me to the question, as we go back and as we're thinking about, like, how we're going to return back to the classroom post-academic, and then if we also want to think about equity issues, okay, so for the kids, his parents are working full-time, both parents, or one parent, it's a single parent home, whatever, can't be homeschooled, or don't have parents that enjoy talking about nerdy math stuff like you and I are having right now. How can this, what can we do for those? Sorry, I froze. Do you think that implementing these kind of learning tools is better? Does it make equity stronger in schools?
Well, equity is going to be a big problem going forward, because going to school was a great equalizer, like, in terms of, regardless of what neighborhood or where you came from, at least 5-6 hours a day, you were all in the same space. Right? We don't know what that's going to look like. So we have to make sure that the expectations are that no students' families get left behind. And, like, some parents are worried, maybe rightfully so, in terms of, my kid's going to fall behind.
Yeah.
First of all, everyone's falling behind, whatever that means. Like, and the whole idea of behind means the other sort of opposite is to get ahead.
Right.
So I don't like that idea of learning behind, ahead, because you're always on the clock. And so I would like to create a math curriculum or package where kids can work on it as autonomously as possible, given all the equity issues which may come out. So a lot of it could be self-exploration, or, like, ideas in which, heaven forbid, kids have to think about it for a week before they come back with something. Because that's how
Right.
mathematics, we make it seem like all mathematical answers must be answered by the time the bell rings or the time it takes to boil an egg.
You preach. Yeah, I'm listening. One thing that you said too that I think we should just maybe talk about a little bit, but we've already gone way over it if anybody ever listens to all this. But you talked about parents, and I think that's what makes education equitable in terms of like how kids succeed too. And I feel like something that I'm learning is how are we preparing parents to go back, because they are so much more important now than ever before. Like we're seeing that. Like I've always thought parents were important. I hope that didn't come across very well, but like if we're not preparing the parents, then how are we really helping their kids? So like these ideas that you're suggesting can also be done with parents, and I think that if we don't pursue that avenue, then we're really missing it, because they're the biggest influencers of their kids, period. And if they're not going to go being at school every day, they're going to be with their parents, and they don't need a computer screen to do a lot of this.
And maybe that's why, like, the whole community has to be. I mean, I've done work with parents. Um, you know, Parents, they want the best for their kids, like every parent
Hmm.
does.
Hmm.
But sometimes wanting the best isn't actually what is the best sort of pedagogy, like,
Sure.
in
Hmm.
terms of, like,
Of terms of know-how and knowledge.
know how, like, I don't care about grades. I don't even know, they don't mean, like, it was the third chapter of our book, grades are for onions and beef. um it doesn't mean anything. And I think going back, I think we have to really spend a lot of time with, SEL, social emotional
Yes.
learning. I think we have to look at anti-racism education,
Yes.
because if that is the message that we can, as as a group of educators community, give, then I think the parents of colors with students of color who have been rightfully traumatized by all these events will feel a trust and a safe space. If we
Amen.
bypass that, then we've just lost everything.
I couldn't. I wish that those were the best words and probably the best part of this whole time talking with you. And I totally agree that the focus on social emotional and anti-racism, I think, fits in that if we really want to have true social emotional for every single one of our students. That's all wrapped together. Um, and I think honestly, and I'm going to read your book and I'm going to go buy it, but if we taught math in a way that was fun and elevating, we're actually putting that in with it all goes together. It's not separate. And one thing I want to abolish as we go back into the next school is teaching content standards separately from each other. It's a waste of time. It's absolutely ridiculous. And it takes away the wholeness of a person and the wholeness of learning. And so I love that, because everything, all the strategies that you're talking about can be part of the SEL or the social emotional learning. And I definitely want to say yes to the anti-racism. We're both raising our kids to be anti-racist, and I think that I froze again. I'm
Yeah.
sure that we can like wrap that into the math or the reading and the social studies. We can wrap it all together so that it's actually for the whole child, you know?
And I think a lot of reflection is going to happen in this coming year in terms of what going back to school, what curriculum looks like, what is emphasized, what is de-emphasized. But I think based on all the position statements that a lot of companies, even my company I work at, have been putting out about anti-racism, I think in 2020 and definitely by 2021, it's going to be a benchmark idea of all curriculum throughout. It's just going to be one of those things that has to be there, and not it's not as it has to be there out of some sort of token political correctness, which might have been there. It's going to be about justice, and
Right.
people are going to be better educated, and people are going to want to be better educated. And I'm seeing that. I'm seeing that in my social media feed and my friends and parents. Basically, yes, we need to learn, and we just need to get out of the way and listen and do all those things. So, as unfortunate this situation has been and continues to be, um, I do see a light at the end of the tunnel in the future.
Right, right. And I just hope that that light can be shared with kids that don't feel so hopeful or parents that don't feel so hopeful right now. That's probably one of our most important tasks to communicate that with the people that we serve and that learn from us.
And I think it's those people that you just identified. I've always had that person as my sort of locus point when I teach.
Mm-hmm.
Usually those kids were actually in my class, but even if they weren't, that's where I sort of taught through. So it's like, the kids who come from privilege and whatever, they're going to be fine. Like,
Yeah, and I would say my friend Dean is watching. He's been watching us the whole time, and he says, and he is a Black man educator, and he says he felt that. So thanks, Dean, for commenting on that and for listening to us. But
well, thank you.
like more of this dialogue, I think, needs to be happening. And I appreciate that you're willing to talk about it and that you care about it genuinely.
Well, I think there's a lot of people. I mean, it's a collective, right? I mean, it's not a matter who got here first or whatever. It's really to be part of a collective, and that's the only way that this thing is going to work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I was talking to Francis Sue, the author of Mathematics is for Flourishing, it's an amazing book, and I had a chance to talk to him in Alberta last year at a math conference, and I said, um, humanization, to be human, has no ego.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have ego if you're rehumanizing mathematics, if you're
Right.
asking for flourishing. So you want everyone to flourish, and
Yes.
you don't keep checking around to see where you are relative to anybody else. Like I have a lot
Right.
of people, because I do a lot of math history, they feel like a little bit of, oh my, I didn't know that. I go, it's not like a box of math history arrived 2 years ago from Amazon on my front porch.
Mm-hmm. Right.
This is 20 years of my own sort of noodling around.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact you are beginning your journey is the most important part. And the thing I'll say
Mm-hmm.
about that, because I use this quote in my presentations, it's a quote from Neil Peart, the late drummer of Rush, who said, from the first ignition to the final drive, the goal of the journey is not to arrive. Right?
Right.
So this whole arrival thing, it also removes us from to be present.
Right.
So if you're present, that is your arrival.
Right.
So,
Agreed.
yeah.
I agree. Thank you so much. Before we go, number one, I want to thank you for this amazing conversation because I really do value your input in every way, shape, or form. I'm so glad to be your friend. But how can people that still haven't heard of you because they've been living in Iraq, how can they follow you? How can they learn more from you?
You can connect with me on Facebook. Definitely love to connect with you there. So you can find me on Facebook. There's quite a few Sunil Singhs, but I think I have a picture of myself and my whole family, brothers and sisters, and my parents in Mexico. So that's who I am. So please connect with me there. But also on Twitter at Math Garden. That's the name, which I should have changed to my name, but it was
It's
default.
okay.
It was default. So I'm on Twitter at Math Garden, and we can connect there as well.
Okay, and you have a new book that's coming out soon too.
Well,
I'm excited
well, hang on. Soon
Okay.
It's going to be fall 2021.
Okay.
So it's called Chasing Rabbits, a curious guide to a lifetime of mathematical wellness.
Nice. I like that. I've told you this that I want to be on your focus group. I want to read that book.
Oh yes, I remember.
Yes.
You did send me a message.
I did, and I meant it.
Okay. Okay. Then okay. Then I'm going to take you up on your offer then.
Thank you. I that's an honor for sure. And one more thing. What is one book besides your own that you would recommend for all of us to read?
I think the book I just said by Francis Sue, Mathematics for Flourishing, for Human Flourishing, which came out in January of this year, because it really talks about just the chapters are broken into things like love and justice, and how mathematics helps us flourish in those particular domains. So this idea of flourishing love, truth, duty, justice, beauty, play, some of the things we talked about. These are all elements to live a flourishing life.
Right.
So, and his book, in a weird coincidental way, the whole premise of the book is because of his friend Christopher, who was serving time, maybe still is serving time for armed robbery, a black male who taught himself mathematics, and he doesn't have a STEM career waiting for him, but he is learning math on his own, and he is flourishing because of it. So that's where the book comes from, is that everything is based on his relationship with Christopher and how anybody can flourish with mathematics.
That's amazing. I don't know that I ever really thought about, I know I thought about the social emotional part of math and how that helps us as human beings, but I don't know that I ever thought about how we can like put justice and fight for justice through it all. But like, I feel talking with you, like that is definitely something that we're missing and that we need to be like putting that. So I definitely will read that book. And I just want to say that my friend Dean also says, he really agreed that the goal of the journey is not to arrive. And like you said, just being present is our arrival, if we're truly present. So, well, thank you so much. This has been like seriously one of my favorite conversations of all times. So hopefully we'll do this again.
We will, Melody.
Yes, and 51 minutes. I can't believe it. I don't go that long usually, but I appreciate it so much. And anybody that's watching or will watch, we appreciate it so much. So have a good one, Sunil, and thank you, everybody. Oops.
Bye.
Yeah, I hit the wrong banner, but there we go. But